Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are back in War Thunder, and it's time to have a look at the Object 292. This is a new Soviet vehicle that is coming in the new event format, which I believe will start in February. Basically, this is a T-80, which they've stripped a lot of stuff off and put a massive gun on, the 152 LP-83. And to be honest, it's looking pretty nice at a 10.0. I know a lot of people have focused on the penetration of the round, but of course there's a bunch of other factors to this vehicle that will make it slightly different to play than others, and also missing a few features, but generally pretty good. So, let's go through the Object 292. First of all, the chassis is the T-80B chassis. We recently did a video on the T-80B, just to kind of show you what it's made out of, and of course, the big thing about the T-80 compared to a lot of Soviet vehicles is it actually has a reverse gear. So this thing can go backwards 10.7 kilometers an hour, max speed of 68 kilometers an hour. Remember, when looking at these things, doesn't include all of the modifications, so this thing will be faster when fully modified. Since it's an event vehicle, you will get it stock, so just remember that when you get this up. But the engine, which I believe maxed out is 1100 or at least close to, does give you good mobility on the platform, and also since this should be slightly lighter than the T-80B, it still should be able to motor around the place. And even if it is slightly heavier, thanks to the gun and also the ammo, it still will have good mobility compared to a lot of the other Soviet tanks. What's kind of interesting is most of the targeting speeds and stuff are very similar to what we've seen from other vehicles. The only difference is the vertical speed being absolutely awful of this gun. 1.9 degrees per second vertical speed. I know the Soviet guns generally have worse vertical speed compared to other nations, but this is just insane how bad this vertical speed is. So that's going to be annoying as all hell to use until you get the elevation mechanism, and well, the elevation mechanism doesn't help you too much since it's a percentage change, and will give you, what, 25% gun lifting speed, so you're still only talking about what, 2.5 or maybe a little bit more, so yeah, a little bit rough. It does actually have the armor composite of the T-80 though. It doesn't get access to the ERA. You can see actually all of the bolts where the ERA should sit, but yeah, it does get the internal composite, so it does have at least some armor on the vehicle compared to others, so it still has the same weak spots as everything, so driver port, lower glacis, and of course the massive gun breech of this thing, so just remember that. And also the steel, or the structural steel, replaces the RA, but to be honest, 70 millimeters is not too bad. You know, it gives it a protection. If we have a look at a similar vehicle, such as the US, the M1, I suppose the M1 KVT, which has access to the M774 of 500 meters, you still have pretty much the same weak spots. So low glacis, you know, cannon breech, driver's port, and also, of course, the upper areas. But yeah, so still the same weak spots. The structural steel and of course the composite armor behind does give you enough kind of armor to be able to stop shots. So you'll shoot this thing the same way you shoot every Soviet vehicle. Nothing is changing. The only thing that's slightly changing is this cupola, which is there. It's 10 millimeters with also 45 millimeters under it, which is kind of interesting. So you might be able to overpressure this vehicle with certain rounds and destroy the inner compartment, which would be kind of cool, but we'll have to see how that goes. So the armor profile isn't too bad. You know, it's not the best, it's not the worst. Very similar to the standard T-80, and the mobility is good as well. Let's talk about the gun. So the targeting speed, as we said, not great, but we'll see how it goes after modifications. The gun does get a 2-plane gun stabilizer, which is huge for it, and also at the same time gets a reload rate of 10 seconds. Now, it does actually have an autoloader, and you can see the head of the ammunition in the autoloader, and that's backed up by the charges which are in the back here. Now this might mean that if you shoot this area, it won't actually explode, but we'll have to see through testing if that's the case. There is also some armor between the charges and the crew compartments, so there may be a chance where you hit this and it doesn't actually blow up the vehicle. If you take additional rounds outside of the autoloader, which I don't really recommend on a vehicle like this, the charges will be in the back here. 30 rounds is too much for a gun like this. 15 to 20 is probably as much as you need, especially with this 10-second reload, unless you are a carry monster. It does also have access to the 3-man crew, the commander, the gunner, and the driver. The interesting thing is the commander at the moment does not get access to fire controls, so if you lose the gunner, you lose being able to use the gun. The optics on it also aren't too bad, 3.9 to 9 times. It doesn't have thermals, this machine. It only has access to NVDs, so that is something to take into account. It does get access to a laser rangefinder, so you can shoot at range, and that is probably what you want to do with this big old donkey gun. So the big one is the ammo, right? Now, the cool thing about the ammo, first of all, you don't have to get a modification to be able to get access to the best rounds. You have 2 rounds with this vehicle, and both of them you unlock as you research the vehicle. So you can see here, as a stock round, the 152mm APF SDS, it has 1980 meters per second muzzle velocity, has 7 kilos of projectile mass, and also incredibly high pen. 695, 586, 401 millimeters. So just to give you kind of an idea of what you're going to face stuff like Leopard 2A4s in this thing. So if we do a comparison of, shooting a Leopard 2A4 with this round, or even shooting, let's just say, like this vehicle with this round. I don't know if I can actually do it right now, because it's technically not in the game. But let's just say you'll be able to go through it pretty much all over the place. You know, the hull will be penetrated is basically the way to put it. So yeah, this is probably the best round in the game now, which is crazy being on a 10.0, but also once we go through some of the other factors, you'll kind of understand why it's a 10.0. You also have the 152mm HE. This one actually has 8.62 kilos of TNT equivalent and 61mm of pen. So if you want to use the laser rangefinder and also this HE, you can donk people, you can overpressure them, you can do a lot of damage as you go around. You also have the dozer blade, of course, since it's the T80, and all of the other standard stuff. You do get ESS, but you don't get smoke grenades. You get artillery support, which is quite nice since it's a medium tank. But yeah, no smoke grenades, and also another thing you might have noticed, no machine guns whatsoever. So there's no top machine gun, there's no coaxial, there's no nothing. And that's basically because of how big this gun breach is in this vehicle. I feel so sorry for the crew, especially having to deal with that. Just to give you an idea of how cramped this is it with armor. There is hardly any space for anything, and these guys can't even move. Once again, we have L44 syndrome, which means that the crew are actually stuck inside of the breach because the breach is just too big. So absolutely crazy for this vehicle to have this large of a gun. But at least you get, the best rounds for the gun straight away. And it does have all of the modern Soviet camos, which is really cool. And because there's a lot of them, right? And it's always nice to see them. Some of them can be ground out, some of them not. So hopefully people enjoy that as we go through here. And also, you have the light green one, which for me, I still kind of am a bit uneasy about because it makes the game feel a little bit pay to win. So the vehicle itself, it has a really cool gun, right? Like, it literally has one of the best guns in the game, which is super fun. And also has that with the T80 mobility. And as somebody who's a fan of the T80 mobility, I'm pretty happy with that combo. If this was on a T72 chassis, I definitely wouldn't be that happy. Doesn't have great gun depression, but because of the angle of the Soviet MBT, it's actually not too bad. And also, even though it has a huge gun, it still has the crazy low silhouette of a Soviet MBT. So the gun depression isn't too much of a thing. The main problem is going to be this, right? The vertical the vertical is just so slow, and that has got me killed so many times in the past. The laser rangefinder plus the round, though, obviously a big one. But yeah, you don't have any follow-up of anything else. So you don't have machine guns, you don't have smoke grenades, you don't have nothing. Here is what the gun sounds like. Quite meaty. Would be nice if it was a little bit meatier, but still pretty meaty. But you should be able to go through pretty much everything that you face. Like, you've got the Abrams here, right? And then, you know, you can just shoot it wherever. The post-pen damage is really good on the vehicle, and works incredibly well. And the limiting factor of the gun is definitely the lack of thermals and also the reload. A lot of vehicles' reloads around this BR is 5 seconds, or 5 seconds aced. So this vehicle doesn't have a great reload compared to them. So you're gonna have to really pick your shots properly. But because of the damage of the round, and because of how much penetration you have, as long as the round sets off, and this is like a key thing. So when you have too much penetration on guns, one of the things that happens is it goes through, but it doesn't shrapnel properly, and then just goes straight through and doesn't do too much. Now the round on this is huge, so it should still be fine. You can see with like testing here, we are getting good like shrapnel on it, so that's not too much of an issue. But it is something to at least think about when targeting vehicles. You still should go for like the key components. You shouldn't like, you know, mess about and go for stuff that isn't. So yeah, the targeting speed of the gun is definitely not very good. The lack of machine guns, the lack of smoke grenades, the lack of thermals, all of these things make it kind of annoying to, you know, compared to other vehicles. The gun is super fun, and the mobility is also really fun. I think this thing actually fits its BR pretty well. I don't think I would want it at higher BRs, but there is definitely a possibility of that going. Also, just as a thing, it does empty the left-hand side of the loader first, so basically where the gunner is. So it will just, for example, if you have a look here, and when it reloads, it'll get rid of the ones on the left-hand side before it gets rid of the ones on the right-hand side first, if you're looking to shoot this thing. And same also with the ammo carousel. So you'll have a big gap on the side where the gunner is when you load rounds. And then, so it's actually better if you're trying to explode the vehicle to kind of shoot the commander side, which is interesting. So yeah, a lot of people are going to enjoy this thing. It will be a lot of fun, but will it be overpowered? No, definitely not. Because it has one factor that makes it really good, and you can play around that factor pretty easily. Think about stuff like the LOSAT, and when that came in, and the issues that it brought on itself, and why you don't see it in many battles anymore. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.